and welcome to the February 2022 films discussion episode of the And Now for Something Completely Machinima podcast. I'm one of the podcast's regular hosts. I'm Tracy Harwood, and I'm joined today by Ricky Grove.
Hello.
Phil Rice.
Yellow.
And Damien Valentine.
Hello there.
Now, we've got a really interesting selection of films to discuss this month. And don't forget, you can watch the films using the links we'll post on our website at completelymachinima.com.
I'm excited.
This is always your favourite bit, isn't it, Ricky?
God, yes. Well, I think it's all of our favourite bits, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't forget, another thing you can do is send us your films. We won't promise to review them, but we'll certainly consider them. We try and select the best films each month and also vary what we're looking at. So I'll start this episode off with actually two films that I've found. One I think we'll be a little bit familiar with. So the first one that I wanted to share with you guys is Evil Imps, Shino and the Witch, an Animal Crossing machinima, which was released on the 24th of December. Now, this is set in a Japanese school of witchcraft. It has shades of Harry Potter with a kind of moaning Myrtle type character haunting the school, crossed with a kind of Scooby-Doo adventure story. The ending has some really nice twists, which I won't spoil for those of you that are going to watch it. I think the music and the soundscape are really well done, and I'm sure we've kind of commented on the way that Evil Imp creates or generates the voices using these kind of squeaks and burbles rather than actual words. I think we've commented on that before. So it's overlaid with text, but this isn't really that burdensome for me, and it's done well enough to sort of read and take the character actions all in, which sometimes I think isn't the case with some of the films that use text. And I think what's also quite fun is that the subscribe and watch call to action at the end of the video is also characterized with that same sort of burbly voices, which I think is really kind of a nice little touch. Anyway, what did you guys think to that one?
Absolutely flawless. This, in our news section and discussion, the question came up, the difference between machinima and animation. If you wanted to answer that question with a film, this would be the film. You will not find a film like this in the traditional animated world because there were so many things in it that people would say, well, that's not professional. That doesn't, why can't you have real people speaking real voices? Why can't you do that? The animation is, they're always doing the same movement all the time. You can't have that. Well, you can. And that's the beauty of machinima, is that you take this game that wasn't intended to tell these kinds of stories and tell a completely beautiful story that is not only interesting and strange and beautiful, but moving as well. These silly little characters that I ordinarily wouldn't pay any attention to whatsoever, suddenly I'm in tears watching it. It's absolutely beautiful. How is it possible? Here's my question. How is it possible that a simple game machinima with limited animations can move you? Yeah. It's machinima, and it's the story and the style of the film. Absolutely great film. The film reflects many of the Japanese mode of storytelling, which is an interesting. I'm a big fan of Japanese cinema and Japanese animation, so I recognize immediately, because one of the things it does is it puts you, the viewer, in making moral choices between the difference in caring and hurting other people. Japanese themes in their films are always about that, the community versus the individual. What a great film. I think it's my favorite film I've seen so far. It's just marvelous.
What did you guys
think? It's my favorite of Evil Imps films, and I've watched quite a few of them. It's definitely my favorite of all the picks that we're going to talk about today. And it's one of the best machinima movies I've seen in a long, long time. Absolutely extraordinary. In spite of the limited environment it's created in, it's beautiful. Yep. Beautifully done. Wonderful shot selection. The story is just fantastic. I mean, at times almost almost disturbing, but in a way that still keeps you engaged. It doesn't make you want to pull away. It draws you closer, like, oh wow, you know what I'm talking about. I want to spoiler anything, but I'll do this. Is that, Tracy? You mentioned the Harry Potter vibe, which the moaning Myrtle thing is very evident there. I would have described it as Harry Potter meets Soylent Green.
Oh, yeah.
Which once you see it, you'll understand what I mean. But
Yeah.
there's a point where there's this reveal of, oh wow, and then you're right, Ricky, that choice that it not just puts the character through that they have to make once they're given that knowledge, but we're right there with them.
Yep.
Wondering the same thing, and gee, what do you do here? What it's just delightful. And I think if I had to nitpick, the only thing that I wish that they would do differently is slightly more pitch or tonal variation between the voices. Because it doesn't matter for sake of clarity, because it's, like you said, it's really just filling sound. It gives it a wonderful international quality. I'm hoping that what Evil Imp does is provide subtitles in multiple languages, because that's taking full advantage of what they've done here. They've made a story that could be understood by anyone.
Yeah.
Just need a little translation on the subtitles. That's the brilliance of either a silent movie with no speaking, or one with that's handled this way, where the audio of the speaking isn't important. But what I found is there were times when there were multiple characters on the screen and there's a voice. It took effort and engagement to know who was speaking. In the same way that I have the same issue with some of Hemingway's writing, when he's portraying a conversation and he doesn't use the traditional, blah, 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 comma, Sally said, answered Hank. Doesn't do the Sally said or answered Hank. It's just one person's line, then another person's line, then another person's line. And if you haven't chosen to really engage with the novel as you're reading and hearing that conversation as you read, you can easily get lost.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
To the same, and that's not I'm not saying that's not a criticism of Hemingway, but I think that because my ears are engaged, that it would be helpful to at least know for sure who was speaking by just a little bit difference in the voice. And that can be done just with a pitch correction filter, honestly.
It's more of a craft issue, slight craft adjustment.
That's it, though. But that's nitpicking, and that's it. I mean, it is just wonderful.
Yeah.
All the way around.
I've really enjoyed it as well. I'll answer with the speech, the sound of the speech. That is the sound the characters make in the game.
Is it?
That is from the game. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not normally a game I would play. When the pandemic started, I bought myself a Switch, and a lot of people were saying this is a really great, relaxing game. So I played the game, and it was one of the things that watching videos like this is, I don't know how he actually did this. I know I've said this about other films before, but this is another one where there are shots in it, I can see how he did it, and then there are other shots where I have no idea, because as far as I know with the game, you can't do those things with the camera. So I have no idea how he pulled it off, which is a testament to him as a filmmaker, because he's managed to take this game and do something with it that it wasn't designed for, but more ways than just telling this kind of darker story. But he's actually done things with the game camera that you can't really do.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wanted to address that, because that was one of the first things that jumped at me, beyond just the story and the way it looked, which is all, it shows the characters perfectly and designed the environment perfectly, which is one of the things that you can do in the game, is a bit like The Sims, where you can actually customize how your game world looks. So he's obviously using that to his advantage to tell his stories in all the different videos he's made, and this is obviously one of them.
Yeah.
In a weird way, I'm relieved to hear that.
Yeah.
Based on what my criticism was, I'm like really relieved that it's not a production oversight on his part. It's just that's one limit he hasn't figured out how to surmount yet, and I completely respect that.
There's a multiplayer mode in the game, and you can text chat. So you make your character, you type in what you want to say, but it will make your character make that sort of squeaky gibberish noise, and it varies slightly based on the letters that you've written. And it's really accelerated, so you can't really understand it. But it does make the noises that your character makes, but depends on what letters you've actually written.
Oh,
That's interesting.
that's
interesting,
fascinating. Yeah.
Wow.
Very interesting. Well, I really
Great
enjoyed
choice,
that. Yeah,
Tracy.
really good. I love
Yeah,
that
great
one.
pick. Great pick.
Excellent.
Well, my second one is completely different from that. It's a wholly different type of content. It's simply called GTA 5 versus The Matrix Awakens, Rage versus Unreal Engine 5, basically. Released on the 16th of December. So it's literally just picking up on The Matrix Awakens Experience release. And all it is, it's simply a comparison of content from these two worlds. Now, last month we talked about the incredible detail that Unreal has put into the Matrix Awakens experience, which, let's remember, is not a game. However, the comparison, I think, is truly outstanding and actually just highlights what an incredible amount of detail has gone into not just the Matrix Awakens, but also into GTA, but especially the Matrix. Now, this film goes head to head with the content, so you see comparison of vehicles, of buildings, of people, of streetscapes, and of kind of what you can do with each of them. I don't know if you had a look at the whole thing, guys, but what did you think of it?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I found it fascinating, and some of it is just that. I mean, GTA 5 is not a young game anymore, So some of it is just that the needle has moved that far to what our computers can handle, and in some of the cases where the up close look at the Matrix versus GTA 5, and it's on the surface it's like, well, that's kind of embarrassing, that it's, but the compromises that have had to be made to rather cleverly solve some problems of the limitation of the engine they're working with. It's actually, there's a level of respect to be paid for that too. I'm talking about on the GTA 5 side.
Yeah.
And okay, so when under scrutiny and compared to what can be done 10 years later, that's pretty crazy, but pretty clever on Rockstar's part to have. I mean, if you look at GTA 5 versus some of the detail levels in Red Dead Redemption 2, there's a stark difference there already too.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Yeah, but it was very interesting comparison since they're both urban environments and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think
I enjoyed it, and I was wowed by the Matrix footage. It's really amazing.
I think the filmmaker was pretty fair in his talk about GTA 5. He says, well, then now he actually, I think there was one thing that he found them sort of equal at, as I recall, but it was pretty good. But my problem with it, and I found it a fascinating idea and I liked it, but about halfway through the film, he had one of his characters come up and there was a woman standing on the sidewalk. And the character came up and just smashed the woman to the ground. Just smashed her right down to the ground. And then there was a big yuck, and then he went on. Just ruined the whole rest of the film for me. Just ruined it.
Yeah,
and
I
I
find
realized
that unnecessary.
It was out of place, yeah.
I went back and I looked at some of his other films, and there is a kind of Game Boy, hey, let's go out and smash things up kind of attitude. Now that doesn't take anything away from the fact that it's a valuable comparison between the two, and I liked it for that. But I just found that unnecessary, and it bothered me all the way through the rest of the film. And don't do that, man. Don't do that.
Fair point.
One of the technical things that stood out to me was it was during the segment where he's showing how cars in the distance are rendered in GTA and in the Matrix. So in GTA they have these 2D images of cars driving around on the roads, and that they would fade into 3D objects. And obviously that's a way to make it look like the streets in the distance are really busy without slowing the game down.
Yeah.
In the Matrix they have actual real cars, 3D models in the distance as well. They're not just pixels, not just sprites. But they also, I think he's trying to make a dig at Cyberpunk 2077.
I was wondering if you saw that too, yeah.
I did.
Meanwhile, in Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
But the thing that stood out to me
was very funny.
Yeah. But the thing about it, it made the Matrix stand out even more because Cyberpunk's only a year. There's only a year difference between the Matrix and the Cyberpunk's release, and if Cyberpunk's still using the GTA approach, that's obviously the approach that most games are still going to take. So the fact that the Matrix can have full 3D models of cars so far off in the distance is another way to show just how powerful this platform is that they've created.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
agree.
not a game. Remember that Matrix Awakens is not a game.
That's why I said platform.
Yeah, I know, but it's from a Machinima creator's point of view. Who cares? But it's
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
it's I think a really interesting.
Let's
approach.
keep, I'd like to suggest that we keep our eyes, part of our thinking about Matrix Awakens all the way through the rest of the year to see how it progresses.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm still hoping that we get a PC version so we can all actually try it ourselves.
Yes, that would be cool.
Let's create a push for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. So, Damien, now you've got 2 films for us this week as well, although both with a similar theme.
Yeah, I think people might start to suspect I'm a Star Wars fan with these 2 picks.
Oh, I don't know how they could think that.
I'm not sure that will go.
I chose the first one I'm going to talk about is Malak, an Old Republic story, and this is the one I found first, and it's a creator that I've been following for a little while because he does create some very impressive videos, and it's Unreal Cinema. He's kind of in the process of taking the story of the Star Wars video game Knights of the Old Republic, which is a very old game now, so graphically it's very dated. He's taken the story and he's recreating it as a film using Unreal 5. And so he's taken part of the plot element to create this, which is kind of a bit of the backstory for the game. He's using Reallusion's character creator to create the human-looking faces. As Darth Revan has a mask, so I'm assuming that character creator was not used for him. And then he's got motion capture for this lightsaber duel between Darth Malak and Darth Revan, and he's rendered out with Unreal 5. And it's one of those videos where I was just really blown away by the quality of it and how smooth the characters, how the fight sequence was done, and the sparks flying off the lightsabers as they were clashing. And then, of course, you see the Reallusion bit where you got the human faces and they were created with the character creator and all the little detail and how well they were rendered in Unreal. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be my pick for the month. So I submitted this one first. So what did you guys think of this one before we move on to the second one?
Well, I was really impressed by the fight scene memory, because obviously, not being the Star Wars nut that you are, I don't know anything about the different backstories and stuff. So it took me a minute to realise that the first part was something else other than the fight. The fight scene was basically a memory or whatever. But what struck me about that fight scene was not just the choreography of it, but the observation of power, which was, I thought, surprisingly tangible in the performance between those fighting characters. How do you perform power?
Yeah.
Well, that was there.
Yeah.
That was definitely in there. And it was also in the reveal. And I don't know whether it was the faces or whether it was the soundscape or whether it was just the mood that, there was just something invisible that created that for me, which was, I thought, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Something extra.
Something beyond really. I thought it was very well done. And then the reveal for why there was this synthesized voice, which was part of that narrative design, which I think probably is one of the things that contributed to that sense of power, which I also thought was very well done. So I thought it was a really impressive short. Another impressive Star Wars short. I mean, I didn't know we could get any better than last week, so I think this one was probably right. Is it equal to the one that we saw last week for me anyway?
I think,
like I said, the soundscape and the voice acting were really good. But I thought the other thing that made this interesting was the Disney-style cinematic aesthetic that they clearly tried to adopt in the intro and the outro, which kind of made you feel that this was more than perhaps what it is. It made you feel that it wasn't an indie studio that had created this.
Yeah, good point.
Which I thought was, again, another interesting thing that I hadn't really seen done as well as this before. So it's just a 5 minutes film. But there was a lot portrayed in it, more than you might imagine. So it's worth a look at this one, I think.
I agree with you. I felt the same way. I was really quite impressed with how everything looked. The reveal was actually shocking to me.
Yeah.
We won't reveal what it is, but it was really startling. I think perhaps two things came to mind. One was that the filmmakers' visual storytelling skills needed a little bit of polishing. Who was the guy that the main character was fighting with? I didn't know. Is it something in the game that you need to know about, or he could have done better in telling that particular story? There was occasional jerky animation that could have been edited a little bit better so it didn't take you out. But overall, I was drawn into the story. I was excited by it. I was shocked by it. It was really a lot of fun. I really respected it.
Phil?
Yeah, I had the same. I played Knights of the Old Republic, so I recognized the characters, but I was able to kind of, as I was watching, step back and think, well, let's assume I haven't. And yeah, there's some incompleteness, I would say, to the narrative structure of it if you don't have that foreknowledge, which I think is, since it's, I mean, by its title, it's being put there as a standalone short of sorts. Yeah, it says it's from this world or whatever, but if this were like a scene from a larger picture, then I probably wouldn't feel comfortable making that judgment call, because, well, there's stuff that came before we'll see that would illuminate those questions about who is who am I supposed to be rooting for here. So, and I think that there's some weaknesses in the narrative because of that. I think a little bit too much assumption that the viewer is going to know this world and maybe even be familiar with the outcome, and this is more of just elaborating on exactly how this came to be.
Right.
But I will say that for in large part the visuals that were they were jaw dropping.
Yeah.
Oh, Phil.
Ding, 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 ding.
I couldn't resist.
Phil, really?
How are we supposed to top that?
Well, it's your turn, Damien. You go.
All right, so.
Oh my God! Oh, Jesus.
And the second Star Wars short today is First Day.
Well, wait a second. Is this another Star Wars?
Oh my
film?
God, yes.
Yeah, I chose two Star Wars films. Well, I chose Malak first, and then I came across First Day, and I was laughing my way through this one, and I thought, I'd already posted Malak in the group, and I thought you've probably already all watched it by now, so I can't see. I don't want to use this one anymore. I want to change it to this one, so I just added it on. And it's basically a stormtrooper being given guard duty, and it's his first day as a stormtrooper, and he's got this excitement. He's really excited about this new job, and he thinks he's going to be the big hero for the Empire and all this kind of stuff, and he's just guarding this doorway, and this other trooper next to him is completely unimpressed by his excitement, because he's obviously a more experienced stormtrooper. He's guarded doorways and had all these kind of duties before hundreds of times. He doesn't really care, and he doesn't see why this other guy's so excited. And he's got this interaction between these two characters, and I was just highly entertained by the way it was written and the way it was animated as well. Again, it's made with Unreal 5, or rendered with Unreal 5, so it looks just as good as the Malak film. And I thought, well, how do I choose between these two films? Now I've already posted one, but I really kind of like this one more. But so I ended up posting both of them. So what do you guys think of First Day?
It was excellent. It's a superb film. It shows how Machinima made in Unreal can compete with the best of the classic Machinima. It had that marvelous sense of humor that so many of the classic Machinima has. Stuff that Paul Marino did in the Ill Clan.
Yeah, it rang of that for me too.
Yeah. It was just so funny, and I enjoyed it. Perhaps the joke went on a bit too long, maybe, but it was super funny. And one of the things I really, really liked was the background and the odd little things that would come up in front of them.
Yeah.
And then the punchline at the end was just hilarious.
Yeah.
We won't reveal what it is, but as shocking as Malak was, this was as equally funny.
Yeah.
At the very end. The performances had that energy of the Ill Clan. It was just a really enjoyable film. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I did too. I mean, actually, I thought it was shades of red versus blue humor.
Ah,
And,
Totally invoked that for me. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
did for you as well, did it, Phil? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just sort of like the church versus kind of, one of the other characters there in that red versus blue episode 1 type stuff.
yeah, but the problem with the red versus blue is that they tend to go off in these philosophical
Yes.
natures, these non sequiturs, and I didn't get that feeling from this
No,
dialogue
no.
at all.
No, I completely agree with you, but it just had that kind of characterization and the sort of riffing off each other, and not in terms of the content, but the way it was done was just very similar.
Yeah.
But I thought it was quite interesting that a comment that they put in the description of it was that it was done as a workflow test for a series that they're making.
Oh,
And I'm wondering, Dame, do you know any more about that? What they're doing with
I
their...
have no idea. I think it's a case of we subscribe to their channel and keep an eye on them and see what they come up with.
Absolutely.
well, shit! If
Yeah, good idea.
they keep making movies like this, I'm in.
Mm.
It's great.
Their channel is called AFK the Webseries, so I'm assuming it's going to be a similar kind of theme.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be Star Wars specifically, but a similar kind of tone with the kind of humor and storytelling.
So yeah, I think that's very smart. Production-wise, they can really crank stuff out with this. So the writing was decent. There was some good fan service in there as far as Star Wars-y jokes. They didn't linger on any of those too long. So if you're not a total Star Wars nerd, you wouldn't be thrown off by it. But if you were,
Right.
little reward for you there. That's
Uh-huh.
that's a clever balance, and I think they did well with that. Some of the writing was a little bit, and I won't get into specifics, but a little bit on the nose. Some of the humor that I don't know. It's so funny that Ricky says about red versus blue, that they get all philosophical. And the funny thing is, when watching this, I was thinking, I kind of wish they'd go a little non sequitur or something. I really did, had that thought. So that's just a matter of differing tastes. But yeah, this is a good sign. I hope they do produce more of this. I hope they keep it simple, because as a producer, I know that's the best way to be able to crank out more content if you want to. And if you look at this versus, let's say, one that we're going to be looking at here in my picks in just a moment, but also the Half-Life Alyx film, Half Peeps.
Yeah.
He actually took to Twitter this week or last week, I can't remember which, kind of lamenting the fact that, man, for the amount of viewership that we're getting versus the amount of effort we have to put in to make this, I sometimes wonder if this is worth it.
Yeah.
What serious machinima filmmaker has not had those thoughts?
Absolutely.
Right? That's there. Half Peeps, if you're listening, man, woman, you are not alone.
No.
You are not alone. That's a very common thing, and I don't have an easy answer for you either. I don't know what to tell you. It is. It's truly a labor of love sometimes, and I look at this, the most recent release that I did, and boy, oh boy, long are the days since my 6.5 million views for bathroom jokes, and here we got Obid, which I'm bleeding on a piece of paper for, and it's 350 people. But you have to kind of keep it in a little perspective here of, if I think locally, what could I do that 350 people nearby me would pay attention to, I would think that was a pretty big deal, right? You know,
Yeah,
the internet
yeah.
has totally changed our understanding of numbers,
Yes.
and especially when Beyonce can release some auto-tuned track and get 1 billion views for shaking it, you know, and here we're slaving away on craft like this, and but it's tough, man. You get focused on the views thing, and much of the time it can get really depressing if you look at it that way. The truth is, any attention's good. So
Well,
it's tough.
I agree with you, and I think that's something that is hard because you have to sort of make decisions as an artist. Do you want to make things that are popular, or do you want to make things that are important to you and that are fun and gets
Right,
a modest audience?
right.
I think there's a shift in your thinking if you'd want to be popular, because then you have to go through that whole marketing thing again, where you
Yes.
go, well, what is popular? If you had perhaps put in bathroom jokes and obit, you may have had more views, but
Yeah.
that would have destroyed the movie.
Yes.
So it's a balancing act, and it's not an easy choice to make. And I don't condemn the person who decides to try to be more popular. I think that's fine. But I'm
Yeah.
really in it because of its passion and its fun and its interest. It's for movies like Malak, that I want to watch,
Right.
or Shino
Yeah.
and the Witch.
Yes.
And that's why we're here, is we're trying to tell everybody about it to get more viewers for
Absolutely.
Yes.
people.
Well, and for mine personally, for obit, yeah, I'm very much at a sense of peace with that. The 350 number only gets in my head if I start adopting it through that,
Inf-
YouTuber
well, you're going to have to become more of an
mindset.
influencer, Phil.
Right, right. But I do look at it as, oh my gosh, I made a 10-minute cinematic quality piece about something very personal to me. Rewind 25 years before any of this stuff was around, I would have never been able to do that. So I'm very grateful that the tech exists to where I could just on my own sit here in an office and just work on that a bit at a time and have that to show. So it's tough, man. It's not easy to decide which side of the fence you're on that. But anyway,
That's
this movie, assuming that they want to make more of it, it's very smart of them to have made it where it's not hard to do.
Yeah.
And I get the impression that compared to other projects that we've seen, this has got some pretty simple parts and pieces, and that's going to pay off, I think.
Yeah.
well,
We recommend it.
Yeah.
We hope people will
Yes.
watch it.
great movie picks, Damien.
Yep.
Ricky,
Uh,
what have you got for us this month?
Well, as usual, I had a half a dozen movies, but I don't want to belabor the point. I picked something that was a little different than what I normally pick. It isn't a story-driven movie. It's more of a combination of let's play and tech demo. It's a company called Dimension, and they focus on recreating real environments using photogrammetry and creating the landscapes in Unreal. That means they go to a real location, they take high res digital photos, they stitch those together as the textures for models, and then they take those models and they put them in Unreal. And then do some adjustments to lighting there, and then they do a sort of slow fly through in different locations. What they're doing, it's actually a VR. It's in virtual reality. The fly through and Unreal is perfect for that. But they've gone to very classic locations around the world that have remarkable landscape, and they've created the digital imagery, took it to Unreal, and then did the fly through. And it's absolutely gorgeous, and it has a kind of meditative quality that I really liked about it, but it also shows the possibilities of future virtual production. It made me think that there's a company that wants to do an adaptation of, say, a fantasy novel, and they can't afford to ship everything to New Zealand. So they hire a company like Dimension and they bring all the New Zealand locations to them in the studio and they put it in Unreal and the actors react to the real environments in Unreal and they've saved a ton of money. And it looks almost the same. If you are very observant, you can see some tiny flaws here and there as you do the fly through. But most people are not going to be looking at the environment that closely because it's that's why it's called a background. It's behind the foreground of the story. So I really liked it, and I hope to follow Dimension more as the year goes on. What did you guys think?
For me, what
I
was really fascinating about this, Ricky, is not something that's actually shown in the film, and that is trying to get my head around how they captured, assuming that this is a relatively authentic rendering of this real location, how they captured that. And I mean, the tech they cite in the description is literally called RealityCapture. And I'm picturing like this guy walking around with one of the, the Google car 360
on,
degree cameras on his head.
on his
I
head.
don't know, man. How does that work? It's just amazing that
Well, there's
somehow they did a fly through or with a drone or a person taking a camera around on a gimbal or something, and it's capturing. We've seen people use is it photogrammetry? Is that what it's called?
that's it.
Where we've seen them do that for objects. There's some fascinating stuff. You can see people doing that and bringing something right into Blender with all this detail, and it's amazing. The idea of doing that basically in some kind of a real-time capture of a whole environment, everything within view of the eye that's capturing it, and then rendering that into usable 3D, space and background and props to some degree. Wow, man. Wow.
Yeah.
The fact
Yeah.
that that's even possible, I found that the video is beautiful. Maybe in my meditative state, that's where I was going with it. Is how did they make this? And my eyes start crossing. I'm not even watching anymore. I'm just, oh. I really want to learn more about this thing, how it works, because it's just amazing to me.
There is a link in the video that takes you to a page, and it's not a full technical explanation. It's more a generalized.
Yeah, I went there to try and find out more. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll include that in the show notes.
I had a very similar reaction to you, Phil, as how did they do this? So after I watched it, I looked up the places that they recreated to try and find photos to compare with what was in the video.
Oh,
Right.
And it is accurate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Completely accurate. I looked at some of the way the rocks were positioned, and it wasn't just that they had a big rock in the same place. It was the same rock, the same shape of
Yeah.
it. And I guess the little smaller ones probably moved because they get shifted around from people walking through there. But the big stuff, that was all identical.
It was.
Yeah, and
Now I'm assuming some of the foliage was probably added with some kind of a tool afterwards, because it's hard to imagine that they're capturing a flapping palm branch.
Yeah.
I
But
would assume
that's
so.
fine. The fact
It was
that
the rocks
shape
I
of everything is
focused on.
there is amazing.
It was the rocks I focused on because I thought those aren't going to change much. Trees are
Right.
going to change because the leaves fall off and
Right.
so on. But when I looked, I thought that rock's in exactly the same place and it's the exact same shape, and it was the same in all of the environments. It wasn't just the one off from that particular
Amazing.
shot. So yeah, I have no idea how they made that, but it's really impressive.
I have to say, I've been to some of the locations shown in this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have. And the location on the Isle of Skye, to be there, it's like being in another world. And to see that rendered out with the rain and the weather unfolding around. I mean, you can barely walk anywhere on Skye on a sunny day. It's usually in rain clouds, or that the old man of Store is almost always in cloud. So to see it, that was beautiful and stunning. But it's the weather that made it astonishing as well. The fact that you could see the water glistening on the rock and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually kind of thought, sort of reflecting back on my memory of being in some of those places, it's like, what they've created is like being a tourist, but having the opportunity to see things that you wouldn't actually see when you were actually in the physical space.
Huh.
which is
Huh.
a kind of really interesting observation.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing is, I'm like 5'2", and what you have seen there is a fly through. I don't know. Some of it must be by drone sort of height. You're never going to see that as you walk through. And not only because of the smoothness of the flight of the perspective, and the angles that you're looking at things as you're kind of going through, and the height that you're going through, but also because of the sheer physical exertion it's taken to get you to that point. So you just don't see it. So these are stunning. These are not, they're not just beautifully rendered environments, but I'd say they've got a historical significance too to them. And I felt you weren't just viewing that as a human would. When you go around that space, that is not what you see. I think what you're seeing there is either a butterfly or an insect flight path, which is, I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? To sort of see
sure
something
is.
rendered to that level of detail and have that ability to perceive it in that way. So I think that adds something to reality, actually.
And then to be able to use it without spoiling it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Imagine dragging a film crew there. You probably couldn't.
You wouldn't be able
or
to.
a government wouldn't let you, or you weren't able to physically. And then the environmental impact of that, and the fact that you could capture some of those locations and actually make use of them without destroying them. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is Machinima.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is Machinima.
The other aspect that Tracy's got me thinking about it is, if I don't know what the restrictions are for those particular locations. If they did a video like this of Stonehenge, where you can't go up to the rocks because they're protected, this is a way you can get right up close to the rocks virtually and see all the detail in them. And like Phil said, there was an episode of Doctor Who that was filmed about 10 years ago that was used Stonehenge as its location, and they had very strict instructions. They were not allowed to touch the rocks. The actors not even brush against them. So the actors had to be extremely careful as they were moving around, and they had to be very careful where they placed the equipment and all that kind of stuff. If they used something like this, they could have done whatever they wanted to.
Yeah, nowadays they would have used that Mandalorian technology. Sure,
they would have smashed them up with their car, blown them up with their guns. Yeah.
I think one of
just smack down that female rock.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
think the other thing that makes this memorable too is the way that they've used the music to kind of. I mean, that's equally evocative of the kind of stunningness of what is being seen, is the fact that you're being, you're being immersed in an amazing quality classic soundscape for all, and it's very different, and it's very evocative for each of the different sort of scenes that you see.
That's a good point. It's well put together aesthetically.
I think it smacks of being truly professionally done, actually. Really beautiful.
I'd like to see a future in which we could use this photogrammetry technique in a cheaper version and go to personal locations, like urban or rural locations that you want to tell stories in, and then have that as a background for your story. So, for example, in LA, we have these very interesting canals. It'd be fun to do photogrammetry of the canals and have some scenes set there. Obviously, the technology is not cheap enough to be able for me to do that, at least to my knowledge. But I'd like to see a future in which that is possible.
A few years ago, the tech is cheap. I don't know whether it's still available, actually. But you could create point clouds on your mobile phone. And colleagues and I have done this, where we created a copy of a real retail environment in which we wanted to illustrate something or other. We rendered it out. I think it was done in, I think the virtual assets were done in Unity, but they used the point cloud that we generated in the real environment in order to map the whole thing, so it was as close as it could be to a real store.
I think that technology is Apple's LiDAR or LiDAR technology scanning.
Yeah. Dead easy to do.
I played with that as well. I didn't have very good results, but I didn't follow the pretty explicit instructions they have about how to keep things level and all that.
Yeah.
I'm just going around with my phone, and then it looks like something out of a
Yeah.
Salvador Dali, but it was fun to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you really get into it, you can appear in it more than one position.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you
That's
get some
funny.
episodes you're scanning around, you say, right, stand there, and then as you scan to another place, say, right, run around there, and then when you turn around, you've got people in multiple different
Yeah.
silly things.
Well, I'm glad you guys liked it. I sure did.
Very
That was
much.
great.
And Phil, you've also got 2 films for us this week.
I do. Well, I mean, one and then a bonus one. The first one is it's called Terminator 2 GTA 5 film, and it basically the filmmaker is, I believe, a Russian guy, Mikhail Kramer, and he's working on a shot-by-shot recreation of James Cameron's Terminator 2, and is pretty faithful to the original, and astounding that he's doing all of this in GTA 5.
Yeah.
This is an unusual type of pick for me because I don't generally encourage people to just go recreate other people's work, but I also recognize that as a way of honing up your skills, it's a nice way to kind of subdivide the skills. You don't have to worry about coming up with the story or the script or the audio, even in this case, and you can focus on honing these other skills and stuff. And this guy does a very good job with it. I haven't done a side-by-side like timing, but I've watched Terminator 2 an embarrassing number of times over the years, and it seems like it's pretty faithful to the original, and it may even actually be using, I'm pretty sure it's using the audio from the original film, which is a great way to make sure that the timing is the same. So anyway, I was pretty impressed with it, mainly because, if I saw someone do this in Unreal 2 or Unreal Engine, my response would probably be, that's a shame, what a waste of time, But the fact that it's in GTA 5, again, not, as we've mentioned earlier, it's not a brand new game, and the visual, the fidelity of the image and his ability to recreate a lot of the same motions and scenes and movements and stuff, it's quite impressive, purely from that point of view. What did you guys think?
Well, I appreciate and I acknowledge the effort that went into making it. And you've clarified the reason why you chose the film. And I can see it. It's a way of sharpening your skills. And that makes sense to me. But I wish he would have not chosen GTA 5, but I wish he would have done it in the movies. Because the thing is that it lacked style. It was sort of generic to me. Without the trappings of the original motion picture, it's really an exercise. And as an exercise, it didn't really involve me very much in it. Again, I admired it and that, but I was distant from it.
I can't help.
Go ahead.
I can't stop picturing a naked Arnold Schwarzenegger walking with the walk animation from the movie game.
That's what I'm saying.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
It would add a layer.
I would pay money to see that.
Yeah. It would add a layer.
I think we're going to dig out our copies of the movies now and see what we can do.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I was thinking about the movies because Ben covered it so well in his history article this last month in January, because he talked about the beginning of the movies and what people were doing with it. And there was this period of time, 2 or 3 years, in which the movies was everywhere. I mean, it had the largest amount of content of any Machinima engine ever. But it just appeared to me that it would be funnier and more entertaining if it was shot in the movies. But I see your point, and I acknowledge that. It just didn't involve me very much.
Top that. Damien, do you want to have any comments?
Like you, Phil, I've watched the original film an embarrassing number of times. So I was listening. It's one of those films where you've seen it, even if you haven't watched it for a while, when you watch it again, you're so familiar with how it's supposed to sound. So I didn't detect any breaks in the audio apart from the opening theme where they replaced it with a fan take of the opening music.
Yeah,
I guess.
which I assume they did to keep it from getting detected by YouTube's
Yeah.
music detector. You
Yeah.
think?
Yeah.
Probably.
Smart move.
But the actual scenes, the audio was identical from what I can remember, and I was impressed by, the background characters kind of looked similar to the way they did like in the bar, but the actual main characters, you got the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, and you've got the T-1000. They look just like
It's
they do in
spot
the
on.
films.
Yeah.
And they've got the motions for them. Again, I guess I don't know if they were able to add more animation to the game, or if they're just using the animations in the game to try and recreate the
I
scenes.
think somebody probably modded those characters specifically for use in GTA 5.
What a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, with
But
some
the-
custom animations and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
What a shame,
Okay, 'cause
because
the
the
animations
legal
were just-
action that is going to take place is probably going to mean that's not a good way to go with this one then.
Yeah,
And-
I agree with you. Epic needs to sue these people. We need to put our foot down on this sort of creative effort.
And then of course,
Epic? You mean
That would really be crossing the line. Suing
mean-
modders of someone else's video game.
That's right.
That's how bad it's gotten.
That's
Thanks, Obama.
Excuse me, Damien. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was about to say I got to the end of the video and I thought I want to watch part 2, and then of course I saw it's only released a few days ago, so part 2 hasn't been released yet. This is just part 1, so it made me want to go back and watch the original for an embarrassing number of times plus 1.
Oh no. Yeah, well, I'm really glad you said what you said about it, Phil, as well, because I had to ask myself, why the hell would you want to make this like this? Well, I mean, it's an iconic film made in a game. Why would you do that? So yeah, I'm glad you answered that question.
Honestly, and honestly, that still is my question about it. The fact that it appears his intention is to do that for the whole movie. I don't care what honing you're doing. Why do that? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. To do this scene or this set of scenes as the exercise.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now move on to another one, hone some different skills. So maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe this director has a very special relationship with that film. It means something, a lot to him. And that's why he wants to do this tribute to it. I don't know.
But there was there was one technical thing that I picked up on, and maybe you guys would be much more sensitive to this than I am, and that was in terms of the sound quality. So irrespective of the video itself, the image side of it, the sound moved from being binaural to being really flat, and I think the guy's got to watch because clearly what he's doing with a really flat sound to me was when he was using the film, the film audio, but I think he also interspersed it with some music that he downloaded from somewhere else, and that had got much more of a richness to it. It was definitely you could definitely hear it in both ears at different times and all that sort of stuff. It moved around in your head, but the film stuff just didn't.
Well, it's probably because he didn't spend any time on mixing the two together.
Okay.
Because that's an effort you have to go to make sure that they're within the same range, with the same tone, or if they're all going to be mono. You don't go from a mono to a stereo and then back again.
Yeah.
That's all distracting. He just didn't seem to put any effort
into that side of it, which is a shame because of all of these films, really, they're not just visual, are they? They're also... It's the auditory side of it that's so compelling as well.
Yeah.
And that to me was a bit, irrespective of the why question, that was the bit that I felt just didn't work.
Yeah.
Really
fair enough.
The thing that I think is interesting also, or I'd like to try to make it interesting, is that when you're doing an homage to something like that, if you add an extra element of satire to it, which an adaptation in the movies would, because then you're sort of kidding the film. That's sort of in the spirit of Machinima, because we love to do that sort of thing, to parody it. but he's not. He's actually trying to do the film seriously. Do you know what I mean? And that comes back to the Phil's question is, well, why? You know, if it's just a technical exercise, you've done it. But if you're not going to satirize it, or if you're not going to say something of why you like it so much, then it's sort of it serves him. It doesn't serve the viewers.
Yeah.
And if we look at the classic era of machinima, we can find a couple examples where people have undertaken this very exercise. Hugh and Strange Company very famously did their Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Whatever very primitive by comparison engine that was.
Yeah.
Somebody did one in the early 2000s that was
Jack Nicholson.
part of the courtroom scene from A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
With Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. You know, you can't handle the truth. That whole scene.
A few good G-men.
But they didn't try to recreate the whole movie.
No.
Yeah.
And that would have been kind of silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really mad about that A Few Good Men thing because it won an award at one of the Machinima festivals. And I kept arguing, well, how can it not win an award? Because it's got performances by Jack Nicholson in it.
Indeed.
I mean, you're competing. Jack Nicholson is competing against all of these other Machinima actors.
He was brilliant.
Yeah. So
I can't believe he agreed to do that.
Yeah. I know.
You know, he's like famously unapproachable. It's really.
But everybody just looked at me like, and I'm an eccentric.
Like, who is that old man?
A couple of times I've actually recreated movie scenes as well. Way back, I did a 1 minute segment from The Wrath of Khan using the movies.
Yeah.
Because someone did I can't remember who it was now. Someone had a contest to recreate 1 minute of any film you want using the movies, just to see if it's possible. Now, there's no real prize. It's just let's see if we can do this. Because, you know, Lionhead had said, you can recreate any movie you want with our software. So that someone said, well, we're going to take you up on that challenge and see what we can do. And then more recently, there was the lip sync contest that Reallusion did.
Right,
and I recreated the scene from The Empire Strikes Back. But again, I wouldn't want to recreate either of those movies in their entirety. It's just, I picked The Wrath of Khan because I just watched it and it was fresh in my mind as that's a good scene to do. And then...
and you really wanted to see Ricardo Montalban do the movie Storm.
Get his due, right?
He doesn't. I've actually found an animation of him folding his arms like he does in the film, but he does it in a really cartoony kind of way.
I have a question for our viewers. Okay, what do you think about doing adaptations using the audio of it? Now, last year I did a trailer with one of our filmmakers of The Town That Dreaded Sundown, I think it was. And he added to it, and he did a really good job, and I was very impressed with it. But this one, I'm not so much. What do our viewers think? Is that a good way to spend your time as a machinima filmmaker? You can contact us at talk@completelymachinima.com and let us know.
Absolutely. And
speaking of adaptations, my final pick is a live-action satirical adaptation of Red Dead Redemption 2.
Wow.
They did a bunch of shorts in this theme and then put them together in this video, which is kind of an omnibus, or a supercut, as they call it. If you've ever played Red Dead Redemption 2, or even if you haven't, if you've played it, you will completely get every joke and reference in here because it is exactly that absurd. The group that made it is called Viva La Dirt League. I believe that they're New Zealanders.
Are they?
Yeah. And it's a comedy troupe, and they do all sorts of stuff. A lot of the content is gaming related. Actually, where I stumbled upon them the first time was they do a series of videos that supposedly take place in a computer store, most notably with a computer repair desk. And as a guy in that line of work, I found those videos just super funny. And then it turns out, what do you know? People who spend a lot of time around computers are also gamers. So I never occurred to me that would be the case. But yeah, so they do a lot of gaming related funny videos, and the Red Dead ones just absolutely cracked me up. So
and I actually,
that's my closing recommendation.
I actually thought they were farmers. Because they got on very well with those animals, I thought.
Yeah.
Brilliantly observed. I loved it.
Yeah,
I've been
it was
following
very
their
funny.
videos for a while. I discovered them during lockdown, and they were very entertaining.
Yes,
especially the gaming, the fantasy sort of D&D.
The role-playing game ones they do. Yeah. Yes, very good.
Yeah, I thought it was very witty, and the absurd situations that they found themselves in were almost like Beckett, watching Beckett. It was so funny. That one scene where he kept doing the quick draw over and over. And he couldn't stop, was very, very funny. And I also want to praise you, Phil, for taking so much time in your deep research to find this film. That's not really a Machinima film, but it's a film, and you managed to pick a film. So thank you for that, Phil.
Now, guys. Well, on that note, I think, unfortunately, that is it for this episode. We've got plenty more films we can tell you about, but not today. We hope you've enjoyed the coverage of the films this month. Don't forget you can give us some feedback. It'd be great to hear what you thought in response to Ricky's question there. You can contact us on all the usual social channels or directly on the addresses that you can find on our website, completely.machinima.com. If you've got a film you'd like us to consider, don't forget to send us the links.
Right. And remember, we have a new YouTube channel. We'll be doing versions of this podcast with the video.
Absolutely.
So keep your eyes open for that if you'd like to look at the video.
Thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.